Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Energy Outlook. I'm Wisdom Chap Jumbo. Tonight, we take a deep dive into the sector, of course, that defines our economy, yet finds itself at a critical crossroads. The oil and gas sector is an important sector to the Nigerian economy. And over the years, especially since the exploration, we discovered oil in the Niger Delta and began to explore for this. Ever since then, the oil and gas sector has been a defining factor for Nigeria. And this has contributed massively to our economy, our revenue, and of course the GDP of the country. But before we go into this conversation today, or this analysis, I want to let's highlight, some news for you, and of course within the sector. Of course, the Energy Outlook is where we tell you what is happening within the sector, from power, oil and gas, and renewables. We go through the entire value chain. I will tell you what's happening. So just to tell you highlights of in the news, what you should know within the sector. We heard this week that Transgrid Enaco Limited, a consortium made up of Stanbic IBTC Infrastructure Growth Fund, North-South Power Company Limited, and Alexa Limited, have successfully acquired a 60% equity stake in Eco Electricity Distribution Company. According to Business Day, this marks the first market-driven acquisition in Nigeria's power sector, ushering a bold new chapter for electricity distribution. It is a significant move towards improving efficiency and delivering value in the country. This is indeed a very important news. So we'll be following it for you. 60% equity stake, in Eco Disco. And like I just read, Eco Disco is of course one of the top distribution companies within the power sector. How would this news shape the sector? Of course, how would this news create the shift? We'll be following the conversations and more of this, of course, for you to read more. So yes, so you now know, and you heard it here also, that a consortium, have successfully come together to get 60% equity stake in Eco Disco, as we call it. Also, on Monday, we know that President Donald Trump, the 47th president of the United States of America, was inaugurated and sworn into office. That election was indeed a tight one, and players within the sector say there have been uncertainties considering Donald Trump's coming into office, as of course we know some of his reactions and where his mind is on some of these issues. So, part of the executive orders that Donald Trump signed as he was inaugurated on Monday, the 20th of January, part of it is one, he has pulled America out of the Paris, agreement. And that agreement is a critical one, for countries across the world. And that conversation is on what the implications are of the United States leaving the Paris Agreement. That wasn't the only thing, of course, that Donald Trump signed. He has also signed for the United States to continue drilling more oil. And for him, it is more drilling and more drilling for Donald Trump. So that executive order has, of course, yes, been signed, and the U.S. will see more drilling. And people are discussing what does it mean, or what will that now mean for the global energy sector when we know that we're moving to cleaner energy. How would that affect what indeed with the conversations across the global energy space, and that is really bringing up quite a lot. We'll be following those conversations for you, and we'll be analyzing some of those things so that you also be up to speed of how that will affect the sector. So yes, the U.S. has said more drilling, and as African countries hear this, we also want to look at it in our own way, where we have energy security issues, and of course, a country like Nigeria. What does this mean when we are all trying to move to cleaner energy? We'll follow that conversation, and we'll tell you more on that. Also, within the week, the Minister of Power, Chief Ayodele, was before the National Assembly to defend his budget. And part of his conversation is, he said, instead of tariff or more tariff, we should look at moving more people to Band A. The Band A conversation is still on, and many people, critics are saying, we can't even get enough power, even for those of us that are in Band A. And 20 hours of power we have gotten, or we said we are going to get, we don't even get up to, that 20 hours. So what is the point? We'll also continue to follow those conversations and tell you more, indeed, of what is happening in that space. It's important. Power is important. And last week we had this discussion in depth to tell you what is indeed happening and what you should look at for 2025. In case you miss that, you can quickly rush to our YouTube channel to catch that episode at Official Upgrade TV. Okay, we'll move into our conversation for today. The oil and gas sector is indeed very critical. And the nation continues to earn its revenue, over 90% of it from oil and gas. In 2024, we saw a lot of things shifting, within the sector. And it's part of what we want to discuss today, so that we set the tune, of course, for the year. We review what has happened last year, 2024. And we'll set the tune for the year and the expectations within the sector. And, of course, try to tell you more, what does the future hold for the oil and gas sector. So today, we are shifting our focus to the oil and gas sector, a sector long considered the backbone of the nation's economy. Historically, it has accounted for over 90% of foreign exchange earnings and 60% of government revenue. However, in 2024, the story begins to change. The nation now faces the twin challenges of decline oil production and regulatory uncertainties while navigating the global pivot, towards cleaner and more sustainable energy. Adding to these complexities, international oil and gas companies, the IOCs, are scaling back their investments and divesting assets worth over $21 billion in the last 5 years alone. This raises many questions, which is what we want to discuss today. With all this divestment by the international oil and gas sector, what is indeed going to happen? What exactly is driving these divestment trends? Are our indigenous companies ready to rise to the occasion? And how can Nigeria redefine its role in the rapid evolving global energy landscape? So today, we'll discuss this very important topic of divestment of interest by international oil, companies. And what is the future? Will this divestment and indigenous players taking over the space? What is the future? Should we be worried? Do we see opportunities, for these indigenous companies? For me particularly, of course, being someone from the Niger Delta and, an oil and gas rich state, I want to ask now, how do we take away some of the issues that the IOCs faced over the years, which has led to some of these worries? But just to let you know that in 2024, we witnessed a total of 5 billion oil and gas acquisition. It was quite interesting, that happened. Over 5 billion. Over 5 billion. We saw Renaissance Consortium completing the acquisition of Shell Petroleum Development Company Limited with a total of $1.3 billion. We saw that happen in 2024. We saw Seplat Energy, completing acquisition, of Mobile Producing Nigeria Oil Limited. That deal was $1.3 billion for last year. We also saw Chapal Energies, completing acquisition of Equinor Nigeria Energy of over $1.2 billion, dollars last year. Chapel Energies also completed acquisition of Total Energies EP Nigeria, 10% interest in SPDC JV, license in Nigeria of over $860 million. The last but not the least, which we saw on the news, a lot, and many players within the sector were talking so much on it, was the Oando PLC, which completed the acquisition of the Nigerian Ajib Oil Company for a deal of $800 million. So these acquisitions, all of it, total value was over $5 billion in 2024. What does this mean for the sector? Because we see that now this has unlocked onshore fields, for new wave of ambition, for indigenous companies. We want to see how those indigenous companies, can even do much more with this. So part of this is what we'll be discussing today for us to deep dive into this conversation. But this week, we also saw that the presidency, through the special advisor, to the president on energy, Ms. Olu, reported a total of 6.7 billion investment into the energy sector. Yes, I'm sure you can see that on your screens. Yes, 6.7 billion of investment, that was welcomed into the energy sector for last year, 2024. Quite interesting. And we're going to dissect some of these numbers today, deep dive into them and tell you what they really mean. And for me, I'm curious, what does this investment translate into at the end of the day? What does that mean, for Nigerians? Last year, we also saw that the Dangote refinery, took off as planned, according to Dangote itself, and that refinery, of course, has been working despite all of the issues, that we have seen. But notably, the year witnessed the final investment decision of Nigeria's first deep offshore greenfield development, valued at 5 billion naira, signaling renewed investor confidence and long-term commitment to the country. But we also saw that there were key developments last year. And I'm walking through all of this because they're going to form basis of our conversation today. And the sector also included, the introduction of 5 policy directives by the president, which we saw last year, that restructured the upstream and midstream sector to attract investment and then expedite energy delivery to the world, to the global and local market. So yes, that's up on your screen. And this information was, of course, made available just recently by the presidency through the office of the special advisor to the president on energy. And they've shared, clearly some of those 5 policy directives by the president for the oil and gas sector, which they now consider the sector reforms. And the special advisor said that this, of course, there'll be more of it in 2025. We want to follow this closely to see. And our plan is also to get her on the show one of these days to talk to us and let's break this down to what you Nigerians can be able to understand. So tonight, as I said, we'll be looking at the trends of this IOC divestment, a trend that has reshaped the narrative, of oil dependency in Nigeria. What does it mean? What is going to change, differently? For the indigenous companies, I'm particularly worried for them, as I think, they will struggle with quite a few things, and I'm sure I'm not understanding how they want to surpass some of these issues, and that is because the IOCs, we understand, are trying to move away from some of these problems, that has slowed their effort down over the years. One of it is the host communities issues. How would these indigenous companies handle the host community issues? There's pipeline vandalization, which continues to happen in some of the host communities. How do we address some of the concerns and the issues? It's my worry for the indigenous companies, and we want to know how the year will go and how they will try to address some of it. My guest today will be doing some good work with us to sort of address and speak to some of the issues, as he will give his insight. He's one of those players or one of those thought leaders within the sector who understand the issues that will tell us more of it. But ladies and gentlemen, before we go further, let's take a quick break. And when we're back, I'll tell you more on this topic and my guest, who he is, and what we'll be speaking to today. Please don't move away. We'll be back. Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we will analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, lives a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.
Looking to take your business to the next level through partnerships? Then join us every Thursday at 10 a.m. for Partner Up.
Whether you're an entrepreneur, marketing, sales, or partnership professional, Partner Up is here to give you the tools you need to succeed.
From in-depth interviews with industry experts
To real-world case studies of successful partnership strategies that drive innovation and business growth.
we dive deep into what it takes to form successful partnerships.
Thursdays, 10 a.m.
Don't miss Partner Up.
Welcome back. Yes, this is the Energy Outlook, and if you're just joining, you've not missed much. We're about to get indeed into the conversation. But before we do that, I will just tell you, just to add to some of the thoughts I shared earlier, the industry, the oil and gas industry, grapples with, not meeting the OPEC production quotas and inadequate refining capacity. As I said before, only until last year that the Dangote refinery came up. And suddenly we had two other refineries that have been moribund for ages come up. And this our stubborn dependence on fuel imports. It's a big problem. How do we solve it? And critics warn that this would signify the sector declining global relevance. And I'm worried myself, but optimists argue that this marks the dawn of a transformative era for local players. That's why we see the divestment happening, and we hope it will indeed change the game for the sector. But joining me is a man whose insights is as sharp as the industry challenges we face, and he has been working within this space for quite a long time. A very, very thought leader whose insights are well respected within the sector. He's joining me to help us look into some of these issues. My guest is Dr. Ayodele Oni, partner at Bloomberg LP, and a renowned energy expert, law and policy.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Oni,
thanks.
welcome
for
to the
being
show.
So generous.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to have you. I've always wanted to have a chat with you on some of these conversations, and I follow you a lot. And I see your very critical and deep insights into some of this. And I haven't met you a few of the energy event. I said, you know what? This is the perfect guest I'm going to have on the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So let's go straight into it. My first question is, what happened that suddenly our refineries came up last year?
Okay.
They have been moribund for many years. And suddenly, after NNPC promised over and over again, from nowhere, the two refineries are up and working. But are they really working? Are they refining? Or we hear it's just naphtha they're producing? What's happening there?
Okay. Interesting question. This was always going to happen. To be honest, whilst I wouldn't stand in for the government, I think that recently the contracting structure has been such that contractors were being paid directly. It wasn't what you had in the past where you gave money to the NNPC for turnaround maintenance. This time around, the structure with having some multilateral lending agencies like the AF, I think the AFDB, a number of them, Afri-Exim rather, in that sense, we're going to be paying, and I know this because I advised one of the prospective lenders. My firm advised one of the prospective lenders for one of the refineries, and the structure was such that they were going to pay the refineries directly, pay the contractors who were doing the rehabilitations directly. They weren't doing a situation where we give NNPC money and the money disappears, right? Corruption is probably played a critical role. I don't have all of the facts, so I wouldn't make accusations so no one sues me. But I know people have always touted that. And when money just disappears, you can always say there's been mismanagement. But this time around, the money just went directly. And I think Mele Kyari did a reasonably good job. Now, speaking about the Dangote refinery, I think that we've always been hewers of wood and drawers of water.
Yes.
And our balance of trade and balance of payment has always suffered because, I'll give you a scenario. We sell crude $1 billion. We buy back finished products $1.2 billion. That's a $200 million deficit. So if you have that, then you are in a deficit. Guys who do not add value to their base resources do not amount to much. Check it. Particularly where you also struggle with good leadership.
Okay.
Maybe some of them, like the Saudis of this world, see what Saudi Aramco is doing. Made a lot of money in the last 2-3 years. A lot of money compared to almost any, became very, very valuable compared to many other companies in the world, right? It's proper management, it's good leadership, it's adding value. And you see that Saudi Aramco is even investing in renewables now.
So many have argued that NNPC should maybe they should go to the stock exchange. They should, they should, they should open up the NNPC more. It's a private limited liability now, but they should open it more, make it public.
Okay, so
would that solve the problem?
Yes, that could solve the problem. I think that once you take running businesses out of government's hands, I always say government is a bad businessman. Government is business for me is to facilitate doing businesses. Now, government can have shares. Government does have shares in Julius Berger, everyone does know. But it's minority. Government does have shares in NLNG. But it's well run. Why? Government doesn't have controlling stake, right? I think it's 49%. To others holding 51%. Anytime you have government-run businesses, then you want to give political favors.
It's always a problem.
Yes, this is usually a problem. So you want to be in a situation where, whilst government may have equity, government does not run it because it's not a good businessman. What government should be doing is what they are doing. These reforms, we say, the tax reforms, reforms in oil and gas, so that you make it attractive. And beyond having policies and rules and laws, you want to ensure where we fail in this part of the world is implementation. I think we have some of the best laws. I argue with my friends who live abroad, and I say, just like public holidays, I had an interesting, we did an analysis, and data is the new oil. We sat down with public holidays in Nigeria and public holidays in Canada. And we found out that Nigeria has only one more holiday than Canada. Also because we practice we take both Muslim or Islamic and Christian holidays. And they too had a lot. They had only one. We had only one more. And they were shocked because they were making jest of me that, oh, you Nigerians are always
we have a lot of holidays.
And I said, I think you guys have a lot. You say St. Christopher's Day, you say this day. Then we brought out our diaries and we found out that it was almost the same thing. So another thing about this part of the world is that we don't say the narratives. We don't let the narratives work in our favor. Usually we celebrate what is bad. And it may be a few of us that are doing what is bad. Similar to tax reforms. There are probably 200 great things, and there are 10 things you question, and everyone latches on that one.
Let me bring you back now. So what we are discussing today is the divestment we have seen happening in the oil and gas sector. And it's becoming a concern, for many people, and especially within the sector. To say, look, are we sure that we can handle this? Are we sure we are ready for this change that are coming? And we just saw from data now that over 5 billion acquisition, happened just last year alone. So my first question to you is, what is happening with these, IOCs, living onshore, going offshore? This divestment that are happening, should we be worried?
A few things. I'd say worried a little, maybe 10% of the worry, 90% of it'll be good ultimately. This is what the challenges have been. First is the guys have grappled with dealing with host communities, regardless of everything government has done, regardless
host
of PIA, host community issues. Shell, Ogoni land for a long while, they couldn't do much, until Tony Elumelu's company bought it over. I'm sure you know that's
and we read the news. The president has met with the governor of Rivers State and others on the Ogoni land.
When the sons of the soil are the ones who do the business, they understand the lingua. I can speak to people. But the average foreigner doesn't understand because there's always a Nigerian factor. There's always that distinguishing factor when you do business in Nigeria, which you must understand. If you don't understand it, then you're going to bring Harvard, you're going to take a model from Harvard, and it's going to fail. So I think that that's one challenge they have. Another challenge is being renewables now. But with Trump, I think that many people See Bank of America pulling out of that green energy transition arrangement. People are beginning to reconsider. Even Shell, Total, the pace at which they are going on renewables and transition, they are pulling back some of those things they are doing. If you read in the press, so the initial thing was
like
we're going green.
Trump wants more drilling.
Yes. They're saying we're going green, and then we're scared of these guys. Let's go deep offshore. Okay. So it's not that they are leaving Nigeria. Many of them are going deep offshore, so and it's an opportunity for indigenous
the local
companies.
players, the indigenous companies, will understand the host community's problems more.
Yes,
but some of these people were the same people that worked in the IOCs.
Working and owning are two different things. You'll be shocked how sophisticated the average Nigerian is, despite the fact that you think they may not be that educated or whatever. But in terms of knowledge, in terms of sophistication, you'll be shocked that they can distinguish between owning and just working. That's one. Two, you'd find out that a number of these companies have already done well. I think ND Western is doing really well. I think Ayodele is doing really well. I think Seplat is really doing really well. And because those guys who own these companies were the guys who work for Shell and Chevron and Mobil and Exxon, they understand the terrain. They understand what it takes. And we've been doing oil and gas since when oil and gas was discovered in Oloibi, right? So it's not alien to us. So I think these companies too will succeed. I think there will always be a learning steep learning curve, rather, is what I meant to say. So it's got its good and its bad. But if you have a total saying we will do $5 billion in Bonga North, that should tell you that maybe there's renewed hope in that sector.
But so what other challenges do you see?
There are definitely challenges
with this IOC, and what sort of innovative strategies, can we put forward to tackle these challenges, especially this year, as we go? The Office of the Presidency, through the Special Advisor on Energy, has said that, from a report which is shared earlier this week, that we have received last year about $6.something billion investment into the sector. But what other challenges do you see with these local IOCs, and how do we tackle them, especially this year, if we mean business?
Okay, so I'd say I'd refer to those indigenous companies as juniors or independents. The IOCs will be the Exxons and Chevron and co. A challenge they may have, and they usually have, is financing. You see what's happening with general hydrocarbons. General hydrocarbons, the financing they did get from First Bank, and the issues. It's in court, so I can't really say much about it. Interestingly, I was supposed to provide advice at some point around that, so I know. So one challenge is raising financing. Apart from raising it, even the interest rate is crazy. That's something government needs to work on. Another thing you need to take into consideration is that those fiscal benefits that you find in the books, government must ensure that in reality you can get them. It's not sufficient to have orders directly.
So it's in the book, but
implementation is critical, right? And those challenges around working with the NNPC and the threshold for requiring further approvals through what is with.
Is the NNPC at the center of whatever we'll see as success for this sector, especially this year? Is the NNPC at the center of it all?
To a large extent, NNPCs. And I'll tell you why. Because for many of the traditional joint ventures, NNPC is a key majority shareholder. If you average it out, it's reduced now. It used to be somewhere around 50, 53, 57 at some point. Because for most traditional joint ventures, NNPC is a partner. And many a times when you exceed a particular financial threshold, you need, that's why you have your management committee, you have your operating committee, you need further approvals, and the NNPC does play a role in this. And also, if you look at the way the PIA is drafted, the NNPC does have a natural advantage with respect to certain assets. Issues like backing rights. The federal government can back into assets, particularly those owned by Nigerian companies. And backing means the NNPC will then own interest in those assets. That's one thing even guys need to start thinking about when they structure their deals. Many people are not aware that there's a backing right. It's always been in our jurisprudence. I think Obasanjo introduced it. I mean, people say when he had issues with Danjuma at at that point, right? So NNPC will be central to a large extent, but outside of the NNPC, I see that a lot of independents can still do business. The Seplats, the Ayodele, the ND Western, the guys that are also integrated and have a refinery. I can't remember their name now. They are also doing well. You know, a number of those guys companies are doing well. And I think not all of them necessarily have the NNPC. Almost all of them have the NNPC or the NNPC subsidiary, the NEPL. NNPC Exploration and Production Limited. Is partner.
A lot of subsidiaries in the NNPC. We're not sure how some of them are working anyways.
Yes, so I think that there'd always be that learning curve. If you're starting something for the first time, but I think we are succeeding, and it's the same guys, right?
Before we talk about what the shift to renewables and cleaner energies we do, you know, in course of all of this, I want you to comment on these deals, 5 deals acquisition we had last year amounting to, you know, $5 billion US. What are your comments on these deals? Should we be worried on anything on these deals, or everything?
There's the Chapel, there's the Seplat Exxon, there's Shell,
Renaissance Consortium.
Yeah, so a number of those deals. Well, for
we can have it on the screen.
For me, I initially had concerns. Why are the IOCs leaving? But if you think it through, also it's strategic for them. Some of them is portfolio rationalization. They think that some of these assets are plateauing, and once you plateau, the only thing you can do is go down, right?
The surprising one for me was SPDC. I mean, after nearly 60 years.
Yes, but you must appreciate the challenges.
Yeah,
SPDC,
we have it on screen now. This is the deals.
You must appreciate the challenge SPDC has had with its onshore assets. Yeah. Right. Unlike the offshore, deep offshore area. And if you see many of their new investments outside of the country, they are everyone seems to be going deep offshore. Yeah, more expensive, but the assets are huge. The volumes are a gusher. So because of that, they are reconsidering their portfolio. It's portfolio rationalization in some cases. In some cases, I know that because of issues such as ESG, shareholders are beginning to push these guys to consider more renewable investments. Why would a Shell buy a Daystar Power? You know, Shell bought Daystar.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and Daystar does largely
2 years ago.
Yeah, Shell does, and Daystar does largely
CNI.
Yeah,
CNI.
Yeah, and it's solar and it's renewables. Yes. You know, so maybe the Shell seems to see the future. You know, and I'll tell you something Shell does. Shell does almost I think they still do it. A worst case scenario. They do scenario planning every year. That things go, oil becomes zero. What's going to happen? The oil becomes renewables. Yeah, worst case scenarios. They do all of those. So I'm sure they've done the analysis and they've seen 100 years from now, and they've moved ahead of the curve. But a new renewable power company on its way up. And the company is doing well. I can't say much more because I do quite a bit of work for this stuff. Prior to the acquisition and even now. So I think they see the future. And they feel that we should be well positioned. Now, if you make money from a sector you think may be on its way down, you want to diversify and use that money and be a first mover in the next thing. So if it's before we move from the Stone Age to whatever else it is, I'm sure guys who made money from stone, some of them are the Shells and the co we see now, because that money they then divested into
so
something else.
there's a future mindset.
Around renewables and all of that.
So just to add now to that future mindset, and now with the global energy markets shifting, to renewables or towards renewables, how can Nigeria leverage this divestment trend, to build a diversified energy portfolio, while maximizing the value of existing oil and gas resources?
Okay, I never really like to discuss oil and gas outside the larger macroeconomic stand we find ourselves. I'll say a few things. Okay. First thing I'll say is that the poorest people in the Western world would have been as miserable as the poorest people in this part of the world, like Nigeria, save for 3 things: great infrastructure, social safety nets, and cheap credits. Now, what I expect the government to do is do not necessarily jump on the wagon of energy transition, because we need a just energy transition, we cannot be energy poor and be transiting. What are you transiting from? We have a lot of oil and gas. Let's make the most. I think we should keep an eye on transition, but I think for now we should make the most out of what we have and build with those investments you see there. Build for the future. Begin to invest in renewables, solar. Have a richer energy mix. And we're rich. If you go to, if you check solar radiation in the north and parts of
very high.
Very high. If you check hydro, reasonable. If you check, almost everything. But even we can do biogas. So I think for now, because natural gas is the bus stop, it's the energy transition bus stop before we finally get to where we're going with decarbonization. And really, even when you talk about decarbonization and net zero, people mistake these things, particularly net zero, to think that there won't be carbon emissions. No, net zero means the emissions that are taken away from the atmosphere, whether through carbon capture, sequestration, whatever it is, and what is brought to the atmosphere is the same. So if you are doing 50 whatever it is, you are taking that same 50 off. So we're not emitting more than what we are taking away from the atmosphere through technology. So for me, let's invest in technology that helps take away carbon.
So with an eye on the future and the global shift, are you saying that we should keep our investments going for the oil and gas while we just continue to drive more of that renewable?
So the oil and gas, some of the money you plan, it's scenario planning. Some of that money you invest in future stuff like renewables. But while still keeping your eye on helping your people improve. Because there's always that energy trilemma. We're suffering from energy. We want to lead Africa. And we don't want to be left behind. But do we then move with the other part of the world who actually use oil and gas to develop? I'm pro-Trump when it comes to energy policy. Well, whilst I might not say drill, baby, drill, like a Trump would say, but if you have it, use it. Do we want to just seal off our oil and gas and
so are you
then
saying
jump
this,
at renewables?
Are you saying this justifies Trump's decision?
I think to a large extent, maybe Trump is extreme.
Okay.
I'm in between. I think that we should look at transition, but we shouldn't be too gung-ho on transition and disregard what we have in oil and gas. For example, I've never been a fan of Trudeau in Canada. Canada has huge oil and gas reserves, has huge, and he's just not letting them do what they want to do. And the country is suffering. It's a financing, amongst the G7 countries, probably 7th, right, overall in the indices. So I'm someone who believes that utilize all you've got, utilize your oil and gas. For example, in my home, I have like 20 kVA solar, and there's that good mix so that you can save money, right? And you can also show, but we still use public power supply, which is gas fired. So I think there should be a mix.
There should be a mix.
And I think it's only when the transition is just. And how can the transition be just? Energy poor countries like Nigeria, sadly. Now, when you say energy poor, I don't mean energy resources in the ground. Your ability to utilize energy. Because you can have something, you can't put crude oil in your car.
The ability to utilize the resources we have.
Exactly. You need to refine and you need to add value to it first to be able to
and refining has been a very major problem for
It's been a major problem. Gas too. Every now and then, until recently, you hear that there's no cooking gas. Or cooking gas prices have doubled or tripled because logistics problems bringing it from Europe or elsewhere. But if you refine what you have, if you process what you have, then you can use it and you can be first self-sufficient. Remember, when you talk about energy security, you look at it from two perspectives. Security of energy supply and security of energy demand. Security of energy supply is, do you have that supply? It's not whether you have crude oil. If you have crude oil and you can't refine it, you may as well not have crude oil. You end up selling it and buying the finished product more than what you made from
which is what we have been doing over the years.
If it's the same thing with gas, you can't process your gas. You don't have LNG, you don't have CNG, you don't have LPG plants, processing plants. That means you're going to sell your natural gas. You're going to look at Henry Orb and all of that, do these dynamics, and bring in products which are going to be more expensive.
We'll take a breather, and then we'll come back to talk about short-term and long-term measures we can sort of put together so that the sector thrives, you know, especially as we go into this year. So join us. We'll be back. This is the Energy Outlook, and we'll take you into the next set of the conversations as we wrap up for this evening. All right, welcome. And I've been talking to Dr. Ayodele Oni, partner at Bloomfield LP. We've been talking about the investment of interest in the IOCs. Of course, what does the future hold, for Nigeria and the sector itself, looking at all of this? So, Dr. Ayodele, we'll come back to you now to say, given the infrastructure gaps in the sector, what are the immediate long-term and approach and short-term we can look at as we address some of these issues, putting into cognizance of this divestment that has happened now?
Okay, the fun thing is that for some of these divestments, if you understand the structure, those who are selling are providing financing. I've never said it before. I want to sell my car to you and I'm lending you money. It's a good thing because it then means that they have money to play around with. Once they're going to pay back those sums as they produce, they have money. Now, we've always suffered from an infrastructure gap. One thing that we can then do, and I've always said it, historically, and this government, in my view, has done really well. There have been challenges. Those reforms have been painful. But some decisions that have been taken 20, 30 years ago are only now being taken, and they'd be painful, especially when you take everything at the same time. That's what the challenge is. So I think that we need financing. It's more difficult to get financing, but we need financing to be able to improve on infrastructure. My view has always been that government should be responsible for the infrastructure backbone. Then private sector guys connect to it, and expand that infrastructure. Now, if you have financing, then you can get the infrastructure. For example, drilling rigs. You need drilling rigs. The average drilling rigs day rates, I'm not sure you get less than $80,000-$100,000. And you're not talking about deep offshore. You're not talking about anything near that, or else you're talking about 500,000, 600,000, maybe very cheap for 400K a day. So from an infrastructure standpoint, you need to be able to move from production well-aid to the market, both your local and your international market. And there's a lot of infrastructure in between.
So financing is one.
Financing is one. You need financing to be able to do that infrastructure. You even need, and that's what the NNPC tried to do. If you know, very recently, they had something like something that can remotely sense production. Metering and fiscalization are critical. How much crude do we really produce? At times, we really do not know. I just make an estimate. So there are regulations.
This metering conference, hydrocarbon conference last year. And it was a massive insight on how are we even measuring?
So those are critical things. Metering is critical for you to even be able to fiscalize and make money out of it. Then you need to then be able to raise financing. People used to do a lot of RBLs, reserves-based lending, on the basis of their reserves, booked, not booked, all of that. But government just still needs to play some role. And multilateral lending agencies.
Are you confident in the role the government has played so far? $6 billion plus into the sector just last year, $5 billion plus acquisitions completed. Are you confident?
Yeah, compared to what we did see in the last administration, I think
there's confidence.
There's some confidence. Yes. I mean, you wouldn't say the glass is half. I wouldn't say it's full. I say it's half full, right? Right. There's much more that can be done, and I think it's unfair to compare us to the US, right?
Okay.
I mean, because a few people will say, I mean, the US in a few days.
All right. So stronger public-private partnership. What do we need to do around this area better, especially this year?
I'll say implementation. For me, we have those laws. We have procurement rules. We have all sorts policies in place. PPP rules, policies, sanctity of contracts. When people go into PPPs, they want to be sure what the terms and conditions are. And they want government to keep their part of the bargain. We need to be able to show that we're a country where we keep contracts. So I think PPPs will play a critical role too. I think also international politics. We need to do more around international politics. For example, we could have benefited a lot from our gas with the Russian, with the challenges with Russia. If we had done the right thing around infrastructure, for example, if we had international pipelines, see what the AKK is going to be and how it can connect to North Africa, and then ultimately we can sell gas to Europe and be an alternative, a good alternative to Russia, both from a pipeline gas standpoint and from an LNG standpoint. If we do all of that, then we are generally on our way to the top.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayodele Oni. Like I said, always a pleasure to hear your insights on some of these conversations.
Thank you very much.
And we are grateful for your time on the show today. We'll continue to follow the conversation, and hopefully we'll have you back soon again. Let's see how we'll review some of the insights we've shared today, maybe at the middle of the year or as the year goes on, and see where we are. But thank you so much for your time on the show.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, but before I leave, I'm going to leave you with this powerful word from Christina. Christina Figueres, the architect of the Paris Agreement. And it says, the future of energy lies not in preserving the past, but in embracing innovation and sustainability. Indeed, Nigeria's energy future is not just about oil and gas. It is about chanting a path that ensures prosperity for generations to come. So, as we continue to push, to get more investment in the oil and gas, we should, of course, think of the future, which is why we're saying there needs to be a just transition, which is indeed important. We'll have more conversation on a just transition one of these days so that we can also dig deep into it to tell you more on what it means and what you should understand when we hear just transition. But ladies and gentlemen, today is our show, and we've been discussing the divestment of interest in the oil and gas sector and what the future holds for us. And I hope this has been very insightful for you. Join us same time next week as we bring you indeed another episode and insights from the energy sector. I'm Wisdom Chap Jumbo. See you next week.